Welcome to Therapy Unplugged, Empowerment, Laughter, and Life, the podcast where two therapists offer insights to the real-life issues we all experience. We are your hosts, Sarah Benoit and Meaghan McCulla.
Today, we are going to introduce ourselves to you so that you all have a better understanding of who we are, how we got here, and why we decided to do a podcast.
Meaghan, why don't you start by telling us a bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Meaghan McCulla. I am a licensed mental health therapist. I am a certified hypnotherapist, and I'm also a certified life coach. I have been working in the field of mental health for a very, very long time. Really, since I was an adolescent, I knew that I wanted to be a therapist and I wanted to help others. I got my bachelor's in psychology in the mid-90s. And after that, I worked at a community mental health center for a very, very long time. I had a lot of different roles that I played in the community mental health setting. Case manager was a big one. I knew I didn't want to stay there, however. And so I made the decision to get my master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. This was in 2008. And after I got my master's degree, I went back into community mental health where I was a therapist for 2 years. And in 2014, I went into private practice. And honestly, I have never looked back.
Nice.
Yeah. You want to tell me how you got started?
Sure. I can't say that I followed the same path. I actually got my degree in the early 90s, but in business administration. And then decided I had a 5-year plan, and the 5-year plan was to work for 5 years and then go back and get my MBA. And when it came time to do that, I realized I didn't want to take finance classes again. So I said, okay, I want to do something for fun. And so I too went through for clinical psychology, no intent in ever using it. It was just going to be something to do. So I had a master's degree. And when it came time to do my internship, I realized I did it on a mental health unit, a lockdown unit, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. So I was like, okay, this is what I want to do now. So essentially, this is my second career. And I started this in my 30s. Again, never having this be the plan. Like you, I did a lot of work in community mental health, kind of worked my way up and got to a place where I realized, I'm like, okay, I was a director and I was doing much more administrative work than working with people, which is the whole reason I decided I wanted to do this. And that's what kind of brought me into the whole private practice realm. And it was a long transition, I would say, primarily due to anxiety, thinking, okay, working on my own versus knowing you're going to get a paycheck every week from an agency or whatnot. And much like you, now once I made the decision to do it full time, never look back. Best decision I ever made.
Absolutely. And one thing I'll add to that, when I decided to go into private practice in 2014, honestly, what really pushed me to that was that I had been in community mental health for so long that even though I had only had my master's degree for a short time, I was asked to fulfill these roles as it started as administrative supervisor and then eventually also director. And after 6 months of doing that, it became so clear to me how much I missed the one-on-one connection with my clients. And so I don't regret at all taking that role as director, but the biggest reason why I appreciate it is because it made me realize that no, my passion and my work is really with the one-on-one. Yeah.
Right. So is that kind of what brought you into wanting to do the podcast now?
Yeah. So I should probably back up and say that while I am a, clinical mental health therapist, I have always been very drawn to look at life through kind of like a holistic, big picture lens. So what do I even mean by that? I have been drawn to alternative modalities that I can bring into my practice for years now. And that's another reason why I was ready to leave the agency. I think it's because I wanted to do therapy on my own terms.
Mm.
So I became very interested in and became certified as a hypnotherapist, and I use hypnotherapy techniques all the time now with my clients. I've been trained in Reiki. I'm a certified life coach, and I also did a training with Brian Weiss and his wife Carol Weiss in past life regression therapy. And so that's all to say that this point in time now where I'm at with you, Sarah, in terms of doing this podcast, I think it's my yearning to once again kind of broaden my horizons with different modalities I can offer to people. And you'll probably speak to this too, but I think that for me, one thing I'm really excited about with regard to this podcast is that we can offer a platform where people can listen in for free, right? And they can take in perhaps some of our expertise. Perhaps they'll get something from the connection that the two of us have. But it's a way to offer our expertise in this brand new way, right? Where we can reach people on a whole new level that while one-on-one is great, it's obviously limiting.
Right.
So, yeah. If you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and it's interesting. I should kind of go back to, because I'm a trauma therapist, so it's heavy work, and I love it, absolutely love it, but it gets heavy. And a lot of what I hear a lot of times from clients that, the other thing I should say, and this is my own thing, but I mean, well, you share this. I mean, neither one of us accept insurance. So that for some is a barrier. And one of the reasons I wanted to do this was to reach more people. A lot of people either maybe they can't afford to go to therapy. They may not want to go to therapy, but they still might want some of the benefits of it. And some people, they do better listening than they would necessarily sitting and talking with someone. I mean, it takes a lot of courage to walk into a therapist's office and sit on the couch. This might be someone's first step. And I really like that. And I like the fact that it could reach people that, you and I may never ever see. They could be halfway around the world for all we know. And I think that saying, halfway around the world makes me also think of expanding our connections, our connectedness. And the fact that we all go through challenges, right? Life is not easy. And this is a way for us to, or at least from my perception, is to normalize therapy, to normalize connectedness, to normalize it's okay to talk, it's okay to be vulnerable, to share how we feel. And this gives us a platform where, sometimes it gets overwhelming for people and they need to push pause. And with a podcast, they can do that.
Right. Yep. Well said. And, I think the only thing I would add to that is, I think when we think about, okay, well, what can people expect from this podcast? First of all, let's just say this is definitely going to be a work in progress, right? This is literally our first episode. But my take on it is that what I would like to offer is, through years and years and years of working with clients, it's become clear to me that even though we share obviously different stories, right? They're going to sound different. The narrative is going to be different. The issues we face on some level are going to be different. There's also a lot of themes that come up over and over and over again that clients need to process, and they need strategies, right? Some just basic common strategies to feel better. And so that's kind of what I see this podcast as being. It's almost like a monthly sessions, so to speak, or bi-weekly, or how often, however often we end up doing this, but where we're presenting some very common struggles that we all go through, right? And then so you learn that you're so not alone in what you're facing, but then also we really talk about strategy, right? And ways, different things to try that could maybe bring you out of a depression or bring you out of a feeling of complete overwhelm. Yeah.
I agree. And I think that kind of brings us to, you mentioned a couple things in there where this is new to us. We are new at doing this. So we're going to have our bloopers, so to speak. But I think you did a good job of, our goal at least is to have maybe an episode once a month, hopefully more, but we'll see. We're not married to that. Covering topics I think that everyone can relate to, which include things like stress management, anxiety, the power of connection, like you talk about, social media. I mean, there's so many things that we've already sat down and said, okay, here are some bullet points in brainstorming that, we want to throw out there. And, and I think you bring up a good point too. I think it's one thing to sit and talk about all this stuff, but then it's another to offer some practical approaches and strategies. So our goal is we want you to have some actionable takeaways from our episodes. And to throw out there too, if there are things that you guys want us to talk about, you want to learn more about, please share your ideas, your thoughts with us. You can email us at therapyunpluggedpodcast@me. Tune into our next episode where we're going to be talking about how being overwhelmed affects daily life. Thank you for joining us today. We love having you here. And until next time, be sure to subscribe to Therapy Unplugged, Empowerment, Laughter, and Life on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and anywhere you find your podcasts.